This is the France 24 debate. We're talking about Nafissatou Diallo, the alleged victim of former IMF boss Dominique Strauss-Kahn, breaking her silence in interviews that she granted to American media. With us to talk about it are Martine Moscovici, an attorney here in Paris, another attorney with us, Ron Suffert, lawyer at both the New York and Paris bars, and France 24's Douglas Herbert and Anne-Elisabeth Moutet of the Sunday Telegraph. We were talking just before the break about naming the victims, about the legality of it all, Anne-Elisabeth pointing out that it's in fact illegal to even discuss what happened in the press in Britain, not the case in the United States or in France. Another issue that's with the fact that Nafissatou Diallo is a household name here in France, but until today unknown in the U.S. In the French media, sometimes she's even just known by her first name, Nafissatou. Would it be the same for Dominique Strauss-Kahn? You don't call him Dominique, huh?
Well, it depends actually on the journalist. But one point that I want to add is that in France, the victim or the presumed victim is part of the proceedings, part of the criminal proceedings. And as a party, they have a lot more latitude because they can speak either to the investigating magistrate or even at the trial without an oath. A victim can never be prosecuted for perjury for what she would say either at trial or to the investigating authorities. And that's a major difference because in the United States she has to be very careful about what she says, for example, to the grand jury and what she would say if there would be a trial in this case.
All right, and Diallo told, by the way, both Newsweek and ABC that she was overcome with fear when she found out after the fact just who Dominique Strauss-Kahn was.
I was watching in the news, and then they say he's going to be the next president of France. Then I said, oh my God. And I was crying. I said, they're going to kill me. I said, they're going to kill me. I'm going to die.
Why did you think that, Nafi?
Because I know if that was in my country, he's a powerful man like that, they're going to kill me before someone knows what happened to me.
And Elisabeth, at the outset, when Christopher Dickey was mentioning the inconsistencies that Nafissatou Diallo had said about things that weren't associated with the case, but more with her naturalization, bringing her daughter over to the United States. Interesting when you listen to what she says there. This is the thought process of somebody who's trying to scrape by and get and basically, like anybody in her social situation, look for a better life.
Yes, I read Christopher's excellent piece in Newsweek last night, and apparently when she applied for asylum, she lied on the conditions of her rape. That is to say, she apparently had been raped by 2 soldiers, and she talked about a gang rape. These are still not very good conditions. Apparently, also, she was not aware that just the fact that she had genital mutilation as a child, as happens quite often, is reason enough, usually, to grant asylum in the United States. So this is somebody who had not a very good life. She was in a very sort of up mountain in Guinea. She went to a religious school where she was not taught to read. She cannot read or write in any language. And she comes from a country where apparently she was taken by the police and she was raped by 2 soldiers because she had gone in the streets of Conakry, the capital, a little time after curfew. So all of this talks about a horrible time that this woman had. So she scraped by. She lied for her immigration visa, which of course is, something that you should not do, but which to some extent is understandable. But I don't think this is something that bears much relation to the fact that she was, she was going she had finally a job that she liked, as long as she was undocumented in the United States, she was working braiding hair in apparently sort of dreadlocks studios in the Bronx, and she was paid in small denomination bills. And now she was making what, by all standards, is a very decent salary plus tips in New York. And she loved this. She was a member of the union, and she felt that she had reached something stable in life. So this whole thing was upsetting everything. And then she had those memories which must have been branded into her consciousness of what can happen with a very important man who's not American.
The case, when you look at it, again, as we said at the outset, what it'll rest on, though, is the reliance of testimony, and if it's somebody who, on top of it, has lied to the grand jury, it makes it very difficult. And you must come across cases where it's people who may have done things wrong in their previous life, but is that a reason?
Well, in France, we don't investigate so much about victims. We investigate about the aggressors. What is happening with Nafissatou and what she did to get her asylum, it wouldn't have been said in France because we investigate only about aggressors. Victims, nobody investigates about them. Only we investigate about what happened when they were raped, or if there was a criminal, something criminal. But we don't investigate about victims. The only investigation which is made is a medical examination by a psychiatrist. But it's not like in the United States. It's, I would say, safer for victims. But what my colleague said, in France, in fact, if a victim goes to a trial and if her aggressor is found not guilty, he can sue her after the trial. This, we have to know it. Even if there is a new precedent saying that if there was a reasonable doubt, she won't be sued, but otherwise, if he's completely released, he can sue her.
Now, we know that there's the daughter of a politician, a journalist and writer, who has come forth in the past weeks and leveled her own accusations in court on this side of the Atlantic against Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Is what's happening in America going to help or hurt the case of that 32-year-old journalist, Tristan Banon?
I don't know. I really don't know. For me, Tristan Banon, she has not lied. The only problem is why has she spent so many times without saying anything, and why she
wait 8 years?
Yeah, 8 years to complain. This we don't understand, because women who wait so long time, it's for family rapes, not for this kind of rape. So I'm very surprised.
She did address that. She did address that question in one of the interviews she gave recently on French state television, basically saying that at the time a lot of people have been saying, and it goes back to this issue of Dominique Strauss-Kahn's position as a powerful, influential individual. He was not the head of the IMF at the time, but still a lot of people advising her not to push this case and not to prosecute it, not just lie low. And in other words, so it's not really shocking when you think about it. It's plausible that she would have waited 8 years if she had a lot of people around her, including her own mother, by the way, at the time, telling her not to pursue it.
I was going to say, again, we're talking about the high and mighty. Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, you interviewed her mother, who herself is a member of the same...
Which is different.
The same Socialist Party as Dominique Strauss-Kahn.
And who said at the time that she felt it would break her daughter, it would laminate her. And also she acknowledged herself freely that her daughter was the goddaughter of Dominique Strauss-Kahn's second wife.
Even though they didn't know each other.
Even though they didn't know each other. I don't think we addressed that, but well, that's what the wife says now. The second wife says now. She mentioned it at the time. Madame Monsouret was a socialist, which is also being sort of, it was a bit more difficult. So she went to see a series of socialist dignitaries, and she said she's a local councillor, and she said, well, there is this personality, and my daughter has been attacked, or my daughter is accusing him. And she sought advice from various luminaries in the party, and some of them said you should sue, and others tried to sort of calm her down. So, and her daughter was 22 at the time. I think there was this fear of making a fuss at the time, and also, as Tristan Banon herself has said, there was this feeling that nobody would take her seriously, and that her entire life would be defined as this 22-year-old who may or may not have had something which is not as bad as Nafissatou Diallo, which is attempted rape rather than rape. Still is a complete no-no, but it's a and. He said, she said, no physical proof, no physical evidence on the body, and it was understandable in many ways that she waited. But then she saw this thing happening in New York, and she thought, well, people may believe me now.
Ron Sofer.
Well, the problem with the Tristan Banon case is a statute of limitation, because if it's sexual assault, it's barred after 3 years. If it's attempted rape, it's
3 years.
It's 10 years. It's 10 years.
So sexual assault is just 3 years.
3 years, and
even if it's very difficult to speak out.
So she's going to have to prove, or her lawyers and the prosecution will have to prove that the sexual assault rises to the level of attempted rape.
And when you
because
see
if it doesn't, it's barred by statute of limitation, and that's going to be a very difficult case to argue.
When you see Tristan Banon's lawyer meeting with Kenneth Thompson, the lawyer for Nafissatou Diallo, in New York, as was the case a week ago, again, is that a smart move?
It's going to be very difficult, from what I know, it's going to be very difficult to get her testimony admitted if there is a trial in the United States, because the lawyers of Strauss-Kahn are going to argue that it's irrelevant and it's prejudicial, and its probatory value is not important, and there is a good chance that the judge will not allow it. I do not know why her lawyer went to New York. He must have his reasons.
Christopher Dickey, in that piece for Newsweek, discusses the fractious relationship between Diallo's legal team and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Both sides have tried to smooth matters over. Thompson has signaled a willingness to let his client be interviewed again if prosecutors let her see a transcript of the disputed prison call, that to an acquaintance or boyfriend of hers. And that is something prosecutors say they're willing to do. But the distrust and tensions could be renewed again after prosecutors learn of Diallo's decision to go public after weeks of remaining in protective custody.
Cyrus Vance, I mean, he's really in to use that old cliche, the rock in the hard place. I mean, because in the American sort of paradigm, the district attorney is as much a political position as a sort of juridical and legal position. And, a lot of district attorneys have, high political ambitions and go on to higher political office. Rudolph Giuliani being just one recent example of that. So this man, if he does have his eye on a higher political prize, and despite, his reputation perhaps for integrity and honesty and forthrightness, he doesn't want to be the one who, pushed a case that was already sort of falling flat and then just fell even flatter on its face, because, he was under pressure to bring it to trial.
Let me give you a couple of reactions we've gotten. First one from Twitter. Meng Lim writes, when you have no evidence, politics and communications are the only tools left. Unfortunately, it works sometimes. Disagreement among viewers out there. Eric, on the other hand, says the name of the game in USA rape trials is credibility, and there's enough material for a skilled lawyer to tear Diallo apart. He just had to lay the groundwork for turning public opinion against the alleged victim first so that he, the DA, didn't look bad. That's where the intentional, calculated leaks came from. It's very possible she was assaulted, but her case has been too damaged already to make things worse. After reading this article, I think it actually hurts her as much as it might help her in the way the article was done. That's what Eric thinks. If we see a situation where Dominique Strauss-Kahn is cleared in the U.S., cleared in France, what does that do in terms of, will public opinion just consider this as just one case, or will it set back the cause of those trying to get people to speak out against sex crimes?
The problem in France is that Tristan Banon has been waiting for 8 years, so she might have been raped, attempted raped. It's very possible, but he may be released because there's no evidence. There's no more evidence. That's a problem. But it doesn't mean that women are not raped. Unfortunately, we know in France many women are raped. And we know about that 75,000 women are raped every year.
So what's the fallout if he's cleared on both sides of the Atlantic?
I think it will be a big thing, a big shock for French feminists. and also for the victims, because she, with this case, with this American case, a lot of victims said if this maid could complain against this man who is very famous and very powerful, every victim could go and complain. So this case helped a lot of women to go and complain. But we must tell them it's not because he could be released that you are not going to be heard by justice. It's very important that you go and complain if something has happened to you.
And Elisabeth Moutet, on this very set, you were mentioning a few weeks back how there's been unprecedented talk about the wrongdoings of the high and mighty when it comes to sexual harassment and the like. Will it all be put back in a box?
Oh, no, I don't think it's possible. I think, first of all, in the case of Nafissatou Diallo, there is physical evidence because she was taken to the victim's unit, she was taken to hospital, there were bruises in personal areas. It's very obvious that something took place. So I think in terms of physical evidence, there was DNA on the floor and on her coat, house coat. So obviously there was evidence in her case. In general, at the end of the day, this has wrecked Dominique Strauss-Kahn's career. Now, I don't, I think poetic justice is a very dangerous kind of justice. But in many ways, even if he gets scot-free out of this, it has changed political life. It has also changed the political life of another French politician, possibly a third one on the right, one on the left, who now have been accused and dropped by their parties immediately because their parties have realized that this is poison. So I believe in the attitudes of the strategists within the parties. They now realize that the sex crime in France is going to be taken more seriously, if only for the practical reason that it's going to bring too much embarrassment for it to be swept under the carpet, and I think it's a big thing.
Ron Soffer, at the end of the day, we're almost out of time here. At the end of the day, does it mean that France and the US will look a little bit more the same?
I think that attempted rape or rape are rightfully severely punished on both sides of the Atlantic. And the problem is that we want to make sure that before we inflict a severe punishment on someone, we are absolutely sure that he's not innocent. And that's the problem in these types of cases. I think we should not be involved in dogma. I think what everybody is trying to do is to make sure that, Dominique Strauss-Kahn faces technically 75 years, or let's say 20 years in jail, which means that his life is over. Before we inflict a punishment of this sort, we have to make sure that a person is innocent. And when you have cases where it's her word and his word, it's always very difficult because of the severity of the punishment.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Ron Soffer, I want to thank you. I want to thank Martine Moscovici. I want to thank Douglas Herbert and Anne-Elisabeth Moutet. And thank you for being with us for the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Business is next, and the tug of war between Capitol Hill and the White House over that ticking deadline for solving the problem before the U.S. government defaults on August 2nd.